Esperanza Rising, pages 58 through 65. Las Guayabas, guavas. They emerged from the fig orchard and continued through a pear grove. When they came into a clearing, they saw Señor Rodriguez waiting with a lantern by the barn doors. They hurried inside. Pigeons fluttered in the rafters. Their wagon was waiting, surrounded by crates of green guavas. "Did Marisol come?" asked Esperanza, her eyes searching the barn. "I could tell no one about your departure," said Señor Rodriguez. "When the time is right, I will tell her that you looked for her and said goodbye. Now we must hurry. You need the protection of darkness." Alfonso, Miguel, and Señor Rodriguez had built another floor in the wagon, higher than the real one, and open at the back, with barely enough room between for Mama Esperanza and Hortensia to lie down. Hortensia lined it with blankets. Esperanza had known about the plan, but now she hesitated when she saw the small space. "Please, can I sit with Alfonso and Miguel?" "Mija, it is necessary," said Mama. "There are too many bandits," said Alfonso. "It is not safe for women to be on the roads at night. Besides, your uncles have many spies. Remember? That is why we must take the wagon to Zacatecas and catch the train there, instead of from Aguas Calientes." "Luis has bragged about the engagement to everyone," said Hortensia. "Think how angry he will be when he discovers you have gone. We cannot take the chance of you being seen." Mama and Hortensia said grateful goodbyes to Señor Rodriguez, then slid between the floors of the wagon. Esperanza reluctantly scooted on her back between them. "When can we get out?" "Every few hours we will stop and stretch," said Mama. Esperanza stared at the wood planks just a few inches from her face. She could hear Alfonso, Miguel, and Señor Rodriguez dumping crate after crate of guavas onto the floor above them, and the almost ripe fruit rolling and tumbling as it was piled on. The guavas smelled fresh and sweet, like pears and oranges all in one. Then she felt the guavas rolling around her feet as Alfonso and Miguel covered the opening. If anyone saw the wagon on the road, it would look like a farmer and his son taking a load of fruit to market. "How are you?" asked Alfonso, sounding far away. "We are fine," called Hortensia. The wagon pulled out of the barn, and the guavas shifted, then settled. It was dark inside, and it felt like someone was rocking them in a bumpy cradle, sometimes side to side, and sometimes back and forth. Esperanza began to feel frightened. She knew that with a few kicks of her feet she could get out, but she still felt trapped. Suddenly she thought she couldn't breathe. "Mama!" she said, gasping for air. "Right here, Esperanza. Everything is fine." "Do you remember," said Hortensia, taking her hand, "when you were only 5 years old and we hid from the thieves? You were so brave for such a little girl. Your parents and Alfonso and the other servants had gone to town. It was just you and me and Miguel in the house. We were in your bedroom, and I was pinning the hem of your beautiful blue silk dress. Do you remember that dress? You wanted it pinned higher so your new shoes would show." Esperanza's eyes were beginning to adjust to the darkness and to the pitch and roll of the wagon. "Miguel ran into the house because he had seen bandits," said Esperanza, exhaling. She remembered standing on a chair with her arms outstretched like a bird ready for flight, while Hortensia fitted the sides of her dress. And she remembered the new shoes, shiny and black. "Yes," said Hortensia. "I looked out the window to see 6 men, their faces covered with handkerchiefs, and they all held rifles. They were renegades who thought they had permission to steal from the rich and give to the poor. But they didn't always give to the poor, and they sometimes killed innocent people. We hid under the bed," said Esperanza, "and we pulled down the bed covers so they couldn't see us." She remembered staring straight up at the bedboards, much like the boards enclosing them in the wagon now. She took another long breath. "What we didn't know was that Miguel had a big field mouse in his pocket," said Hortensia. "Yes, he was going to scare me with it," said Esperanza. The wagon creaked and swayed. They could hear Alfonso and Miguel murmuring above them. The persistent smell of the guavas filled their noses. Esperanza relaxed a little. Hortensia continued. The men came into the house, and we could hear them opening cupboards and stealing the silver. Then we heard them climb the stairs. The 2 men came into the bedroom, and we saw their big boots through the crack in the bed cover, but we didn't say a word. Until a pin poked me and I moved my leg and made a noise. I was so frightened they would find us, said Hortensia. But Miguel pushed the mouse out from under the bed and it ran around the room. The men were startled, but started laughing. And then one of them said, "It is just a raton. We've got plenty. Let's go." And they left, said Esperanza. Mama said they took almost all of the silver, but Papa and I only cared that all of you were safe. Do you remember how Papa said that Miguel was very smart and brave and asked him what he wanted for protecting you, his most prized possession? Esperanza remembered. Miguel wanted to go on a train ride. Hortensia started to hum softly, and Mama held Esperanza's hand. Miguel's reward, that day-long train ride to Zacatecas, seemed like yesterday. Miguel had been 8 and Esperanza 5. She wore the beautiful blue silk dress and could still see Miguel standing at the station, wearing a bow tie and practically shining, as if Hortensia had cleaned and starched his entire body. Even his hair was slicked down smooth, and his eyes gleamed with excitement. He was mesmerized by the locomotive, watching it slowly pull in. Esperanza had been excited too. When the train arrived, all sputtering and blistery, porters had hurried to escort them, showing them the way to their car. Papa took her hand and Miguel's and they boarded, waving goodbye to Alfonso and Hortensia. The compartment had seats of soft leather, and she and Miguel had bounced happily upon them. Later they ate in the dining car at the little tables covered in white linens and set with silver and crystal. When the waiter came and asked if there was anything he could bring them, Esperanza said, "Yes, please, bring lunch now." The men and women dressed in their hats and fancy clothes smiled and chuckled at what must have looked like a doting father and 2 privileged children. When they arrived in Zacatecas, a woman wrapped in a colorful rebozo, a blanket shawl, boarded the train selling mangoes on a stick. The mangoes were peeled and carved to look like exotic flowers. Papa bought one for each of them. On the return ride, she and Miguel, with their noses pressed against the window and their hands still sticky from the fresh mango, had waved to every person they saw. The wagon jostled them now as it hit a hole in the road. Esperanza wished she could get to Zacatecas as fast as she had that day on the train, instead of traveling on back roads, hidden in a slow wagon. But this time she was buried beneath a mountain of guavas and could not wave to anyone. There was no comfort, and there was no Papa.